Over 6 months after P. Diddy's homes were raided, we, the public, finally have some answers as to why. And it's so much worse than any of us could have imagined. And in case you forgot, in the week since I posted my last video, I'm America's attorney. I've been a lawyer for over 23 years and I've helped over 20,000 clients, which means, I know a thing or two.
Because we've seen a thing or two.
So let's break down P. Diddy's, aka Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy's, aka Diddy's, aka PD, aka Love's federal indictment. There are 3 charges listed in the 14-page indictment, which may seem like a small number, but these allegations through these 3 charges there's some serious stuff. The first charge is for racketeering, which is a word that most people know, but don't really know. Racketeering refers to illegal activities, often conducted as part of an organized crime enterprise involving schemes for profit through extortion or fraud or coercion, usually all 3 of those. These practices are made illegal by the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, or RICO Act. The key elements of racketeering include a pattern of illegal activity, enterprise involvement, interstate commerce impact, and of course, criminal intent. Common examples of racketeering are extortion and bribery, embezzlement and drug trafficking, the good stuff. So what does a 3-time Grammy Award winner do to get charged with racketeering? Well, by using what the indictment calls the Combs enterprise to do things like sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Holy cow! These are all crimes. Why not just charge Combs with 10 different crimes? Why combine all of them into one simple-ish racketeering charge? Well, because a racketeering charge can include all the crimes alleged in the indictment while carrying stronger penalties like longer prison terms and bigger fines. A racketeering charge also gives the prosecution the ability to seize Diddy's assets. You've heard, I assume, of the 1,000 bottles of baby oil that they already seized? Well, that was just for evidence. When this whole thing is over, they're planning on taking everything. These advantages will give the prosecution a stronger case overall and a better ability to get justice for the victims when the whole thing is over. Now, while accusing Sean Combs of racketeering, the indictment gives some insight into a lot of the work that was put into Combs' alleged web of crime. This includes details like in arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to the victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. And so much more. In fact, it took the indictment about 10 full pages to fully describe the behavior that the SDNY believes constitutes racketeering. But after it does that, the indictment moves on to charge number 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Now, I don't know about you, but American media can often portray sex trafficking as some kind of kidnapping scenario where victims are transported to some backwater hole in a foreign country after getting nabbed in a van.
I'm your Uber driver. Get in.
And it probably does look like that in some scenarios. It certainly does. But that's definitely not what happened here. In the U.S., the crime of sex trafficking involves the recruitment, harboring, or transporting of individuals for the purposes of sexual exploitation using force, fraud, or coercion to compel the victim to engage in commercial sex acts. According to the indictment, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained a person, victim 1, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim 1 to engage in commercial sex act, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim 1 was engaging in commercial sex acts as a result of force, fraud, and coercion. Since the allegation is that videos were made of the freak-offs and that those were used as leverage to compel the victims to engage in additional acts, you can see that this is a perfect example of coercion. allegedly. Lastly, the indictment charges Diddy with transportation to engage in prostitution, alleging that Combs transported, aided and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution. Now, Congress passed a law called the Mann Act, which explicitly criminalizes the movement of human bodies across state lines for the purposes of prostitution, even when the prostitute might be legal in the state to which the people were transported. Sean Combs is not the first celebrity to be prosecuted under the Mann Act. If you're a fan of old-timey music or old-timey movies, you might not be surprised to learn that Charlie Chaplin and Chuck Berry were both prosecuted under the Mann Act, and Berry was convicted and spent 2 years in prison. The fact that Combs flew people out for these freak-offs is what more specifically broke the Mann Act, according to the indictment. So let's put on our Oracle hat here for just a second. That's not an Oracle hat. Let's theorize what's gonna happen to Sean Combs in the future. I may sound like a broken record here, but when an individual is charged in federal court with a crime, they almost always end up convicted. In fact, the stats are close to this. 90% of people plead guilty before trial. And of the remaining 10%, 90% of those are convicted by a jury after a trial. That's 99%. So things are not looking good for Combs, especially given the number of crimes that he has already been charged with. And to me, this does seem like a classic situation where there will be a superseding indictment with more allegations to come. So don't expect Puff Daddy to return to any sort of normal life ever again. In fact, if you're gambling, and I don't know if you're allowed to bet on this, I think you should be betting that he will spend the rest of his life in jail. And to be clear, this isn't the full extent of Diddy's legal issues. Multiple news outlets have reported that over 100 victims have come forward, with many planning on taking legal action against Diddy. And actually, more than 3,000 people have complained to the law firm that has signed over 120 cases that it says that it's going to bring. And these would just add to the existing lawsuits filed last year and earlier this year against Diddy, which I broke down in this video here. Now, these civil lawsuits are definitely going to ride the momentum of his federal charges. In federal court, a civil lawsuit typically takes 2 to 3 years from beginning to end. But incarcerated criminal defendants must go to trial within 9 months unless they agree to sit in jail longer while they wait for trial. There are elements of the forthcoming civil claims which will be proven conclusively by any conviction or plea deal that P. Diddy suffers. However, each plaintiff will still have to prove each of the elements of their case. But the big picture is this: they're gonna take all of his money and he's never gonna recover. So what are your thoughts on P. Diddy's indictment? Do you think that Sean Combs should rot in jail for these allegations? Do you believe that he's innocent until proven guilty? Drop your pro se opinion down below in the comments and let me know what you think. And don't forget to lawyer up and hit that subscribe button, because I will be back with more videos soon, and I know you don't want to miss it. See ya! The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District to sit in jail longer while they want it filed earlier